The moment he entered the velvet room, the air changed, molecules rearranging themselves around his presence like subjects bowing to a king without a crown. Nobody dared look directly at the Mafia boss, yet everyone watched him from corners of their vision, afraid to be caught staring at power personified. Kathleen noticed it immediately from behind the bar, her dark hair pulled tight in a practical bun, fingers pausing momentarily on the glass she was polishing. 3 years of working in this underground establishment had taught her to read a room better than most people read books, and tonight, something was very wrong. The contrabasso player hit a low note that vibrated through the smoke-filled air, providing the perfect soundtrack to the tension building in the dim red light. Kathleen's eyes flicked to the bottle display, using the reflective surfaces to scan the room without turning her head, a trick she'd perfected during her night shifts. In the far corner, 3 men sat unnaturally still, their attention fixed on the boss with predatory focus, rather than the casual glances of curious onlookers. Their hands stayed below the table, coats buttoned despite the Louisiana heat seeping even into this basement sanctuary of jazz and secrets. When the boss approached the bar and took his usual seat, Kathleen placed his whiskey neat before him without a word, their ritual unchanged for months. The amber liquid caught the light as ice clinked against glass, her movements precise and practiced, despite the warning bells screaming in her mind. He didn't acknowledge her. He never did, treating her as part of the furniture of his kingdom, useful but unremarkable. Tonight, however, she would force him to see her, even if it meant crossing the invisible boundary between their worlds that neither had dared breach before. Leaning forward to wipe an imaginary spill, she spoke so softly her words barely disturbed the air between them. "They've been watching you since you walked in. Don't look at me." Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady, a bartender's most valuable skill. The boss's expression didn't change, not a single muscle betraying recognition of her warning, but his index finger tapped once against his glass. Acknowledgement. His eyes stayed fixed on his drink, reflecting discipline forged through decades of dangerous encounters and narrow escapes. Minutes passed like honey dripping from a spoon, slow, heavy with anticipation, sweet with the possibility of survival. Kathleen moved away, serving other customers with practiced smiles that never reached her eyes, all while monitoring the predators through peripheral vision. The boss finished his drink with deliberate casualness, placed a large bill on the counter, and stood with unhurried confidence. No hurried movements, no backward glances, just a man heading toward the restroom at the back of the establishment, where Kathleen knew a service exit led to the alley. One of the watching men stood, hand reaching beneath his coat with practiced efficiency, face expressionless as a shark's. The other 2 split up, one heading toward the front entrance, the other following the boss's path with measured steps disguised as casual movement. Kathleen dropped a glass deliberately, the crash drawing momentary attention as crystal shattered against hardwood floor. In that split second of distraction, the boss disappeared down the hallway, the sound of a door closing barely audible beneath the resumed jazz. A muffled pop echoed from outside, not loud enough to disturb most patrons but unmistakable to trained ears. The watching men froze, then converged at the back exit, moving with sudden urgency that broke their careful facade of normalcy and revealed the hunters beneath. When they returned minutes later, faces tight with frustration, Kathleen knew the boss had escaped their trap. The men surveyed the bar one final time, eyes lingering on her long enough to raise goosebumps along her spine before they departed into the New Orleans night. She continued working until closing time, muscles tight with tension, wondering what consequences her interference would bring. Had she saved a monster? Created a debt she never wanted? The questions swirled in her mind like ice in whiskey, dangerous, numbing, and impossible to ignore. 3 days passed without incident, each shift at the velvet room stretching Kathleen's nerves tighter, as she expected retribution from either side of the invisible war she'd stumbled into. The normalcy was more frightening than immediate danger, a calm before an inevitable storm. When she arrived for her evening shift and found an unmarked envelope with her name written in precise calligraphy tucked beneath the register, her stomach dropped. Inside lay a silver ring, bearing a spiral snake symbol, and a handwritten note that simply read, "You did well. Never turn your back to the mirror." The message wasn't a threat, but a lesson, one that sent electricity down her spine with its implication that she was now visible to forces that preferred to remain unseen. Kathleen slipped the ring into her pocket, unsure whether to wear it or burn it, the weight of it seeming to grow with each passing hour. The night progressed with typical rhythm, jazz filtering through cigarette smoke, patrons drinking to forget or remember, depending on what haunted them. Kathleen moved with heightened awareness, cataloging faces, noting positions, treating everyone as potentially dangerous until proven otherwise. Just after midnight, when the crowd thinned between sets, she felt him before she saw him, that subtle shift in atmospheric pressure that preceded the boss's arrivals. He appeared at the bar without fanfare, taking his usual seat as if their last encounter had been entirely unremarkable. Kathleen poured his whiskey without being asked, studying him through lowered lashes, noting the perfect composure that revealed nothing of his recent brush with death. No bodyguards accompanied him tonight, either supreme confidence or calculated risk. She couldn't tell which. "You returned," she said quietly, not quite a question as she placed his drink before him, the crystal catching crimson light from overhead fixtures. Her voice betrayed nothing of the turmoil beneath her professional demeanor. Years of serving volatile men teaching her to mask emotions beneath practiced neutrality. The boss's eyes met hers directly for the first time, dark, evaluating, intelligent, beyond the brutal power they contained. "I pay my debts," he replied, voice like gravel wrapped in silk, cultured yet dangerous, the kind of voice accustomed to both boardrooms and bloodshed. Kathleen felt herself being measured, assessed for value beyond her warning, her worth calculated in a world where human life held variable prices. "The men who watched you," she ventured, keeping her voice low, "they've been back, asking questions about you, about me." Something dangerous flickered across the boss's face, not anger directed at her, but a cold purpose that transformed his features into something almost inhuman. "Names have power," he said after a measured pause. "I've never asked for yours, nor you for mine. That changes tonight." He extended his hand across the bar, an unthinkable breach of the unspoken boundary between them, offering formal introduction where before there had only been transaction. "Bernard Holt," he said, the name falling between them like a gauntlet thrown in medieval challenge. Kathleen hesitated only a second before accepting his hand, his grip firm but not dominating, a respect she hadn't anticipated. "Kathleen Reeves," she responded, feeling the ground shift beneath her feet, as anonymous service transformed into recognized alliance with 4 syllables of her true identity. Bernard released her hand but maintained eye contact, intensity undiminished. "They were Grayson's men. He's wanted my territory for years. Thanks to you, he still doesn't have it, which means he'll try again. And now he knows you exist." The implications settled over Kathleen like a shroud. She'd saved a life but potentially sacrificed her own anonymity, her safety, the careful distance she'd maintained from the underworld that surrounded the Velvet Room. "What happens now?" she asked, surprising herself with steady words. Bernard Holt sipped his whiskey, savoring it briefly before answering with chilling certainty. "Now I ensure nobody watches either of us again." The promise hung between them, neither comfort nor threat but simple fact. The world had changed, and survival would require adaptation. Kathleen's apartment felt different that night. Shadows deeper, silence heavier, ordinary creaks transformed into potential warnings. She checked locks twice, windows 3 times, finally settling on her sofa with a baseball bat nearby. Sleep an impossible luxury when every sound might herald danger. Morning arrived without incident, sunlight chasing away immediate fears, but leaving behind a residual unease that followed her through mundane routines. The university campus where she attended afternoon classes seemed exposed now, too open, her fellow students oblivious to how quickly safety could become illusion. Professor Walsh's economics lecture blurred into background noise as Kathleen's mind calculated risks, weighed options, contemplated leaving town versus staying to face whatever consequences approached. The silver snake ring burned in her pocket, a talisman or target depending on perspective. Walking to her evening shift, she noticed a black sedan parked half a block from the Velvet Room, windows tinted beyond legal limits, engine running despite being stationary. Kathleen altered her route, using back alleys and service entrances, remembering Bernard's warning about mirrors and watching eyes. The bar owner, a gruff man called Pike with weathered skin and knowing eyes, pulled her aside before opening. "2 men came asking about you today. Suits, not cops, not friends." His expression conveyed volumes, awareness of the world beyond his establishment without directly acknowledging its tentacles. Kathleen nodded, throat dry, wondering how quickly her ordinary life was unraveling. "Did you tell them anything?" she asked, already knowing Pike's answer. He hadn't survived 30 years in this business by volunteering information to strangers with dangerous questions. Told them you're just a student working nights. Nothing special. Pike grunted, patting her shoulder awkwardly. Whatever you're mixed in, girl, tread careful. I've buried enough employees over the years. The uncharacteristic concern from her normally taciturn boss only heightened her anxiety. The night progressed with excruciating normalcy. Each customer scrutinized. Each order delivered with plastered smiles hiding hypervigilance. Bernard didn't appear, the absence somehow more conspicuous than his presence would have been. The empty seat at the bar, a reminder of connections formed in danger. Just before midnight, a well-dressed woman Kathleen had never seen before slipped into the bar, movements too graceful, attention too measured for casual patronage. She ordered a martini, sipped once, then slid a business card across the counter with manicured precision. "Mr. Holt requires your expertise tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, she said, voice melodious but eyes clinical, assessing. "The address is on the card. Wear something formal. Bring nothing except the ring he gave you." Without waiting for response, she left cash for her untouched drink and glided toward the exit. Kathleen examined the embossed card, Holt International Investments, with an address in the Garden District, far from the underground world of the Velvet Room. The juxtaposition of legitimate business with shadowed dealings created cognitive dissonance, reminder that power operated on multiple levels simultaneously. Pike appeared beside her, eyeing the departing messenger with suspicious familiarity. "That's Juliet, Holt's right hand," he murmured, surprising Kathleen with his knowledge. "If she came personally, you're either very lucky or very dead. Sometimes both with those people." "You know Bernard Holt?" Kathleen asked, unable to mask her surprise that her employer moved in such circles. The revelation shifted her understanding of the Velvet Room itself, perhaps not just adjacent to power, but deliberately positioned within its orbit. Pike's laugh held no humor, just weary knowledge. "Everyone in New Orleans knows Holt, girl. Some just pretend they don't until they need him. The smart ones pray they never do." He turned away, conversation clearly finished, leaving Kathleen with more questions than answers. She finished her shift on autopilot, mind racing through possibilities, consequences, scenarios both hopeful and catastrophic. Whatever Bernard Holt wanted from her transcended simple gratitude for a timely warning. She had become a piece on a chessboard she couldn't fully see. The Garden District mansion stood like an elegant fortress, white columns and manicured hedges concealing state-of-the-art security systems that Kathleen spotted with her newly heightened awareness. Wrought iron gates opened automatically as her taxi approached, cameras tracking her movement with mechanical precision. A butler greeted her at the door, his posture military despite the formal attire, eyes scanning beyond her for potential threats. "Ms. Reeves," he acknowledged with a slight bow. "Mr. Holt is expecting you in the library." His accent carried traces of Eastern Europe, hands positioned to access whatever weapon he undoubtedly carried beneath his impeccable jacket. Kathleen followed him through hallways adorned with art valuable enough to fund her entire education, each piece authentic rather than reproduction, power displayed through casual ownership of beauty and history. The snake ring felt heavy on her finger, marking her as something between guest and possession in this rarefied world. The library doors opened to reveal Bernard standing before floor-to-ceiling windows, backlit by the setting sun, his silhouette sharp against orange-gold light. Unlike his appearances at the Velvet Room, here he wore no armor of anonymity. This was his kingdom, his strength undisguised and unapologetic. "Thank you for coming," he said, turning to face her, expression unreadable as always, yet somehow less guarded. The formality created distance where danger had briefly connected them, boss and bartender retreating to their respective roles despite circumstances that had momentarily bridged worlds. Juliet materialized from a shadowed corner of the room, tablet in hand, efficiency personified in a tailored suit. Security reports Grayson's surveillance team has increased to 6 operatives watching Ms. Reeves's apartment and the university campus. Her delivery was clinical, as if discussing weather patterns rather than people hunting another human. Bernard nodded once, decision already made. "Show her," he instructed Juliet, who approached Kathleen with the tablet displaying surveillance photos. Men in nondescript clothing watching her building, following her to class, documenting her movements with professional precision. "They've been tracking you for 4 days, Bernard explained, pouring 3 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter. "Not to harm you yet. They're gathering information, establishing patterns, waiting for the right moment to use you against me." The realization that strangers had been documenting her life while she remained unaware sent ice through Kathleen's veins. Privacy violated, security shattered, normalcy destroyed by invisible observers. "Why am I here instead of running?" she asked, accepting the offered whiskey with steady hands that belied her internal trembling. Bernard's smile held no warmth, only calculation and perhaps reluctant respect. "Because running keeps you alive but vulnerable, always looking over your shoulder until they eventually find you. I'm offering an alternative." He gestured toward a dossier on his desk, invitation to explore its contents. Inside lay documents, new identity, passport, bank accounts with substantial balances, property deeds in locations scattered across continents. "Disappearance," Kathleen whispered, understanding immediately the offered escape route. Not just running, but transformation into someone untraceable, unreachable, unknown. "One option," Bernard confirmed, watching her reaction carefully. "You saved my life without obligation or expectation of reward, a rarity in my experience. This would settle my debt completely. You vanish tonight. Begin again elsewhere with resources to build whatever life you choose." Juliet's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in her eyes. Assessment, perhaps recalculation of Kathleen's importance in whatever game they played. "The second option is more complicated," she interjected, glancing at Bernard for permission to continue. "You stay," Bernard said simply, leaning against his desk with casual authority that couldn't disguise the tension in his shoulders. "Work for me officially. Position created specifically for your particular talents. Observation, discretion, instinctive understanding of dangerous situations." The offer hung between them. Escape versus engagement, safety versus risk, anonymity versus purpose. What exactly would this position entail? Kathleen asked, mind racing through implications, weighing freedom against curiosity about the world she'd glimpsed behind the Velvet Room's shadows. "You would become my eyes in places I cannot appear personally," Bernard explained, gesturing toward another file containing photographs of upscale establishments, restaurants, hotels, private clubs where wealth and influence gathered behind closed doors. Intelligence gathering primarily, identifying threats before they materialize. Juliet added practical details with business-like efficiency. Full benefits, substantial salary, security team assigned for protection, apartment in a building we own, university tuition covered until completion of your degree. The offer sounded legitimate, corporate, almost normal, if one ignored the underlying danger. Kathleen considered both options, weighing immediate safety against the surprising desire to understand this shadowed world further. "Why me? You have professionals," she gestured toward Juliet, "trained for this work. I'm just a bartender who happened to notice something wrong." "Precisely why," Bernard replied, moving to stand before her, close enough that she could detect expensive cologne beneath the whiskey on his breath. "My professionals are known to Grayson's people. You are unexpected, underestimated, with natural skills that cannot be taught no matter how extensive the training." Outside, darkness had fallen completely, New Orleans transforming into its nighttime self, beauty and danger intertwined like lovers in the humid air. Kathleen stared through the window, considering how her life had narrowed to this single decision point, choice between paths equally unfamiliar. "If I stay, I want conditions," she stated, surprising herself with sudden certainty, with boundary setting in the presence of a man unaccustomed to limitations. "I finish my degree regardless of work demands, maintain my position at the Velvet Room as cover, and receive combat training immediately." Bernard's expression shifted minutely, approval or amusement, impossible to distinguish, before he extended his hand to seal their arrangement. "Agreed, with one addition. You'll move into secure housing tonight. Your apartment is already compromised beyond recovery." A knock interrupted, before Kathleen could respond, the butler returning with another man whose military bearing was unmistakable, despite civilian clothing. "Mr. Holt, we have confirmation of movement toward Ms. Reeves' apartment. Grayson's specialists, heavily armed, approaching from multiple directions." Time compressed into critical moments. Bernard issuing rapid orders, Juliet's fingers flying across her phone, the security team mobilizing with practiced efficiency. Kathleen stood momentarily frozen, realizing her decision had been made for her by enemies already moving to capture or kill. "How did they know I'm here?" she asked, fear finally breaking through her carefully maintained composure, the reality of danger transforming from abstract threat to immediate peril. The theoretical choice between new identity or new position had vanished. Now, survival alone mattered. Bernard's expression darkened with cold fury. "We have a leak. Someone informed Grayson of tonight's meeting, which means someone close to me cannot be trusted." His gaze swept to Juliet, who nodded once in silent understanding, already compiling mental lists of potential traitors. "The private garage now," Bernard instructed, hand pressing lightly against Kathleen's back, guiding her toward a concealed door behind one bookshelf. "Stay close. Follow exactly. Speak to no one but me until we reach secure location." His commanding tone brooked no argument, emergency protocols overriding polite negotiation. The hidden passage led downward, concrete steps replacing luxurious carpeting, practical functionality replacing aesthetic display. Kathleen descended into Bernard's true world, not the mansion with its cultivated elegance, but the infrastructure of power beneath, where survival superseded appearance. 3 armored vehicles awaited in the subterranean garage, engines already running, drivers anonymous behind tinted windows and tactical gear. Bernard directed Kathleen toward the center SUV, most protected position in the convoy formation, his hand never leaving the small of her back. "Your first lesson in my employment," he said quietly, as they settled into the vehicle's bulletproof interior, "begins now. How to vanish when enemies know your face, how to counter when opponents believe they have advantage, how to transform threat into opportunity." 3 weeks passed in Bernard's secure compound on Lake Pontchartrain's northern shore, isolated acreage protected by water on one side, surveillance technology on others. Kathleen's days filled with intensive training, combat techniques from former Special Forces operatives, weapons familiarization with Bernard's security chief, tactical driving on private tracks. Nighttime brought different education, Bernard himself teaching the subtleties of his world over chess games and bourbon in his study. "Power exists in information more than violence," he explained, voice measured as he captured her night. "Knowing secrets rather than creating bodies, though sometimes both become necessary." The transition from bartender to whatever she was becoming happened with disorienting speed, her mind and body adapting to new realities with surprising readiness. Perhaps, Kathleen sometimes thought during rare quiet moments, she had always been destined for this shadow world rather than the conventional path she'd planned. Bernard watched her progress with calculated interest, their relationship evolving beyond initial debt into something more complex. Mentor and protege, certainly, but underlaid with tension neither acknowledged openly. His protection remained professional, his instruction thorough. Yet moments existed between words where something else seemed poised to emerge. "Grayson's organization has gone quiet," Juliet reported during their morning briefing, rare uncertainty in her typically confident assessment. "No movement near the Velvet Room, no surveillance of your known associates, no chatter through our usual channels, complete communication blackout." Bernard's expression darkened, experience teaching that silence from enemies rarely indicated surrender. "Preparation, not retreat," he concluded, fingers drumming rhythmically against polished mahogany. "He's gathering resources for something significant, removing pieces from the board temporarily to reposition for stronger attack." Kathleen recognized the strategy from chess lessons, apparent withdrawal concealing aggressive reorganization. "When do I return to the Velvet Room?" she asked, understanding that resuming her previous role might draw Grayson's forces back into observable patterns, provide information currently lacking. "Tonight," Bernard decided after brief consideration, eyes meeting hers with unspoken question. "Ready?" To which she nodded affirmation. "Full security detail nearby but not visible. Communication devices concealed. Extraction plan in place if situation deteriorates." Pike welcomed her return without comment on her absence, his only acknowledgement a barely perceptible nod as she tied her apron behind the bar. The Velvet Room remained unchanged. Same smoky atmosphere, same jazz quartet, same mix of legitimate customers and shadowed figures conducting business beyond legal boundaries. Kathleen settled into familiar routines with newfound awareness, each movement now informed by combat training, each customer interaction analyzed for potential threat. The woman ordering mojitos could conceal weapons in her oversized purse. The businessman by the wall continuously scanned exits with too casual precision. 3 hours into her shift, she noticed him. Unremarkable appearance deliberately cultivated, medium height, medium build. Nothing memorable except eyes too sharp for his blandly pleasant face. He ordered Scotch neat, positioned himself at the bar's corner with clear sightlines to both entrances. "Enjoying your evening?" Kathleen asked with professional courtesy, placing his drink on a napkin embossed with the Velvet Room's logo. Her training screamed warning, though his demeanor remained perfectly pleasant, the disconnect between appearance and instinct raising internal alarms. "More than expected," he replied, voice cultured, accent neutral, practiced in its forgettable quality, "though not as much as I will when you deliver a message to your new employer." His smile never reached calculating eyes, threat wrapped in civility like poison in sweet coating. Kathleen maintained her bartender's mask, heart accelerating while expression revealed nothing. "I'm afraid you're mistaken. I just work here," she responded, the denial automatic, though she knew it futile, aware that Grayson's representative would not approach without certainty. The man's smile widened slightly, appreciating the performance while dismissing it entirely. "Mr. Grayson admires loyalty, Ms. Reeves, even misdirected loyalty such as yours. His proposition is simple. Bring him information about Holt's upcoming waterfront development, and your family in Baton Rouge remains untouched." Ice flooded Kathleen's veins. Her mother's modest home, younger brother still in high school, aunt who'd raised them after father's death, vulnerabilities she'd never connected to her current situation. "I don't know anything about business developments," she answered truthfully, mind racing through protection possibilities. "You have 3 days to learn," the man replied, sliding a phone across the counter. "Untraceable, disposable, meant for single-use communication. Call the only programmed number when you have something valuable. After that, consequences become—" He paused, sipping his scotch. "Unfortunate for those you care about." Kathleen maintained her composure until closing time, functioning on autopilot, while her mind processed Grayson's threat against her family, the one vulnerability she'd failed to anticipate. Once Pike locked the doors behind the last patron, she activated the emergency contact device concealed in her watch, Bernard's security team responding within minutes. The drive back to the Lake Pontchartrain compound passed in tense silence, Kathleen's hands clenched around the burner phone like it might detonate if gripped too loosely. Bernard awaited her arrival in his study, Juliet beside him reviewing security footage from the Velvet Room, both expressions hardening when Kathleen recounted her encounter with Grayson's messenger. "Your family is already being moved to safety," Bernard assured her, anticipating her first concern before she could voice it. "Security teams were dispatched the moment you activated the emergency signal. Your mother, brother, and aunt will be at a protected location within the hour." Relief flooded through Kathleen momentarily, before new worry took its place. Her family would be terrified, uprooted from normal lives because of choices they knew nothing about. "They deserve an explanation," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "One that doesn't expose them to more danger but gives them some understanding." Bernard studied her, weighing options, calculating risks and benefits of various approaches to the human element he typically managed through distance and control. "Agreed," he finally responded, surprising both Kathleen and Juliet with the concession. "You may speak with them once they're secure. Limited information. Emphasis on temporary precautions rather than permanent threat." Juliet interrupted with professional precision. "More urgent is determining how Grayson identified your family connection despite our countermeasures. Background checks on all security personnel are being re-verified. Communication channels audited for breaches." Her tone carried accusation toward no one and everyone simultaneously. Failure had occurred. Responsibility would be assigned. Bernard dismissed this concern with unexpected calm. "The leak is intentional. Specific information I allowed to circulate through controlled channels. Grayson accessed exactly what I wanted him to find. No more." His revelation transformed the apparent security failure into strategic maneuver, chess moves advancing while opponents believed they held advantage. Kathleen processed this new information, anger flaring briefly that her family's safety had been gambling chip in Bernard's larger game. "You anticipated this threat against my family? Used them as bait?" The words emerged sharper than intended, training temporarily forgotten as personal fear overrode professional distance. To her surprise, Bernard accepted the accusation without defensiveness, not as bait, as inevitable target requiring preemptive protection. Grayson's psychological profile indicates consistent targeting of emotional connections rather than direct confrontation. I didn't create the vulnerability, but recognized its existence before he exploited it. The distinction offered cold comfort, but demonstrated foresight Kathleen couldn't dismiss. Bernard had prepared for attacks she hadn't even considered, protection already in motion before threat materialized. The realization shifted her perception further. Her new employer operated steps ahead in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Morning brought confirmation of her family's safe relocation to a Bernard-owned property in coastal Mississippi. Comfortable, secure, surrounded by personnel presenting as household staff rather than obvious security. Kathleen spoke briefly with her mother, offering sanitized explanation about potential identity theft requiring temporary precautions, promising visits soon when circumstances permitted. The burner phone remained silent throughout the day, pressure of deadline building with each passing hour. Bernard convened strategic meeting in the compound's conference room. Digital displays mapping Grayson's known properties, business interests, personal connections, intelligence accumulated over years of calculated observation. "We don't wait for him to call again," Bernard announced, strategy crystallizing as he paced before the assembled team. "Instead, we control this exchange by offering information he wants, but cannot resist. The waterfront development plans, modified to include security vulnerabilities that don't actually exist." Juliet nodded approval, already typing implementation directives into her tablet. False blueprints showing phantom access points, security schedules indicating coverage gaps that won't occur, personnel files for guards who don't exist. Convincing enough to pass initial verification while leading his people into prepared containment areas. Kathleen recognized the elegant trap being constructed, not simply defensive protection, but offensive counterattack disguised as vulnerability. "He'll send his best operatives to exploit the weaknesses we're revealing," she observed, thinking through implications, potential outcomes, necessary preparations for various scenarios. The burner phone activated precisely at midnight, screen illuminating with incoming call that Kathleen answered according to rehearsed protocol. "I have what Mr. Grayson requested," she stated without preamble, voice steady despite tension coiling through her body like steel wire pulled taut. The voice responding carried authority, rather than the messenger's bland professionalism. Grayson himself taking direct control of operation he deemed critical. "Excellent decision, Ms. Reeves. Bring the documents to the abandoned fish processing plant on Harbor Road at 2 a.m. Come alone, or your family's protection becomes irrelevant." Bernard's team tracked the call's origin despite sophisticated masking technology, triangulating position to luxury yacht moored in Lake Pontchartrain, rather than the decrepit meeting location specified. "Classic misdirection," Bernard noted with professional appreciation rather than concern. "He'll monitor the plant remotely while maintaining safe distance on water, expecting either your capture or my personal intervention." Preparations accelerated, Kathleen changing into tactical clothing designed to appear civilian while concealing body armor and communication equipment. Weapons positioned for quick access without obvious visibility. Bernard's security chief conducted final equipment check personally, ensuring nothing could malfunction during critical moments ahead. "Remember your training," Bernard instructed as helicopter prepared for departure, his hand briefly touching Kathleen's shoulder in gesture containing complex meaning beyond simple reassurance. "Trust the team positioned around you, maintain the cover story until confirmation signal, then move immediately to Extraction Point Alpha when operations begin." The abandoned processing plant loomed against night sky, broken windows like missing teeth in industrial corpse, rust-stained walls testament to prosperity abandoned when fishing industry collapsed decades earlier. Kathleen approached alone as instructed, modified blueprints secured in leather portfolio, burner phone confirming her arrival to watchers unseen. 3 men emerged from shadows as she reached the building's entrance. Professional operators with military bearing barely concealed beneath civilian clothing, weapons visible enough to communicate threat without explicit statement. "The documents first," the leader demanded, hand extended with impatient authority. Kathleen surrendered the portfolio without resistance, portraying nervous cooperation, rather than calculated participation in operation larger than these men could comprehend. "My family's safety is guaranteed now?" she asked, voice deliberately pitched higher than normal, embodying fear expected from Bartender thrust into dangerous circumstances beyond experience. The leader ignored her question, attention focused on documents being authenticated by associate with specialized equipment, scanner detecting electronic markers Bernard had incorporated into false blueprints, confirmation of apparent authenticity, triggering sequence of events already in motion beyond these walls. "Mr. Grayson appreciates your cooperation," the leader finally responded, satisfaction evident as authentication completed successfully. "Though he questions your sudden access to classified development plans, convenient timing suggesting preparation rather than desperation." Kathleen recognized the pivot point, suspicion transforming interaction from simple exchange into potential interrogation or worse. Mr. Holt has been bringing development documents to review at his regular table, she explained. Alibi practiced until delivery sounded natural rather than rehearsed. He's careless when drinking, leaves papers unattended, speaks too loudly about security details. Skepticism remained in the leader's expression, decision forming behind eyes that had witnessed enough violence to become desensitized to its implementation. You're coming with us. Mr. Grayson has additional questions requiring more thorough discussion than this location permits. The extraction order, disguised as kidnapping but actually triggering Bernard's operation, arrived precisely as expected, Kathleen's rehearsed protests providing cover for strategic compliance. The leader gripped her arm with professional restraint, firm enough to control movement without leaving evidence of excessive force. Outside, engine sounds approached. Not the expected extraction vehicles, but helicopter rotors growing louder, spotlights suddenly illuminating the loading dock area with blinding intensity. The leader's communication device activated with urgent voices, words indistinguishable but tone-conveying emergency protocols initiated. Chaos erupted in choreographed precision. Bernard's tactical team breaching from multiple entry points simultaneously, coordinated assault targeting Grayson's men with non-lethal efficiency, designed to capture rather than eliminate. Kathleen broke free and practiced movement, seeking predetermined cover position while operation concluded around her. The leader recognized betrayal too late, weapon-clearing holster as Kathleen's hand closed around concealed taser, Bernard's training manifesting in muscle memory that required no conscious thought, electrodes connected with chest, voltage disrupting nervous system, target collapsing before finger could close on trigger. Dawn broke over Lake Pontchartrain as operation concluded. Grayson's yacht seized, digital evidence secured, prisoners transported to holding facility Bernard maintained for situations requiring discretion beyond official channels. Kathleen watched from compound's observation deck as authorities arrived to take custody of prisoners and contraband, following anonymous tip regarding weapons trafficking. Grayson miscalculated twice, Bernard explained, joining her as Coast Guard vessels escorted the seized yacht toward port. First assuming you could be manipulated through family, then believing his position on water provided safety from conventional approach. His satisfaction remained measured, victory acknowledged without excessive celebration. Juliet presented preliminary after-action report with characteristic efficiency. 17 arrests including Grayson himself, complete digital records of criminal enterprises spanning 5 states, offshore accounts containing funds traceable to human trafficking operations previously attributed to other organizations. Her assessment continued with catalog of intelligence gathered, assets seized, connections identified for further investigation. The victory felt hollow to Kathleen despite its completeness. Her family remained displaced, their lives interrupted by danger they never chose, consequences of her decisions affecting those she sought to protect. When can they return home? She asked, question encompassing concerns beyond simple logistics. Bernard considered her question with unexpected sensitivity. Your mother's house has been upgraded with security systems. Subtle, unobtrusive, but effective. Your brother's school security has been similarly enhanced. They can return within days once Grayson's remaining associates have been located and neutralized. The practical solution addressed physical safety, but not emotional impact. Trauma of sudden evacuation, ongoing anxiety about normal life disrupted without warning or adequate explanation. They need more than security systems, Kathleen noted, confronting the human element Bernard's strategies sometimes overlooked. They need assurance this won't happen again. You're right, Bernard acknowledged after brief consideration, decision forming as he spoke, which is why your next assignment involves creating secure communication protocols for your family, regular contact, verified safety measures, established emergency responses should threats reemerge. Kathleen recognized the assignment as both practical necessity and personal concession. Bernard adapting rigid organizational structure to accommodate human connection he typically avoided. Thank you, she responded, gratitude genuine despite awareness that practical benefits served his interests alongside hers. 2 months later, the Velvet Room hosted private event, jazz quartet playing softly in background, while select guests celebrated business acquisition never mentioned in financial news. Bernard occupied his usual seat at bar, Kathleen serving drinks with professional efficiency that disguised heightened awareness developed through continued training. Their working relationship had evolved into partnership unlike Bernard's arrangements with other employees. Her unique position as catalyst for Grayson's downfall, granting perspective others lacked. Insights born from civilian perspective rather than lifelong immersion in shadow economies and power structures. The waterfront development breaks ground next week, Bernard noted, as she placed his whiskey before him, their conversation appearing casual, while containing layers of meaning invisible to observers. Legitimate investment, job creation, community improvement, exactly as planned before Grayson's interference. Kathleen nodded, understanding significance beyond simple construction project. Territory reclaimed, power consolidated, order restored through strategy rather than bloodshed. The harbor master mentioned increased patrol schedules around construction site, she commented. Information gathered during reconnaissance disguised as friendly conversation with waterfront workers. Bernard's slight smile acknowledged value of intelligence network she developed, contacts providing information through channels invisible to traditional surveillance. Bartender's natural role as confidant utilized as asset beyond price. Precisely why you remain invaluable. You hear what others miss because they speak freely in your presence. Pike approached with uncharacteristic formality, envelope extended toward Kathleen with gruff announcement. Ownership papers. Bar's yours now. Too old for this business. He departed before she could respond. Emotion concealed beneath abruptness. Years of mentorship culminating in unexpected inheritance. Kathleen opened envelope with stunned disbelief, documents confirming transfer of the Velvet Room's ownership from Pike's name to hers. Legitimate business acquisition, providing permanent cover for operations conducted beneath surface. Her questioning gaze met Bernard's, suspicion forming about invisible hand arranging apparent gift. His decision entirely, Bernard clarified, reading her thoughts with unsettling accuracy. Though retirement funding appeared in his account anonymously, ensuring comfortable departure from business he built. The arrangement typified Bernard's approach, influence exercised through opportunity rather than obvious control. Kathleen surveyed the establishment, her establishment now, with newfound perspective on territory both visible and concealed. The bar where danger first connected them had transformed into nexus point, where worlds overlapped. Legitimate business, intelligence gathering, power carefully balanced between shadows and light. To new beginnings, Bernard proposed, raising glass and toast that acknowledged transformation more profound than simple business acquisition. Their eyes met directly. No longer boss and bartender, not quite equals but partners in alliance forged through shared survival rather than contractual obligation. Thank you all for following this intense journey through the shadows of New Orleans. If you enjoyed watching how a simple warning transformed into a dangerous alliance between unlikely allies, please write in the comments where you're watching from around the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with others who appreciate stories where ordinary people discover extraordinary strength when faced with impossible choices. Your support keeps these tales of danger and connection coming your way.
Сейчас зайдем, посмотрим, как у них трансляция началась. Если вот рассматривать, я говорю, задумываясь о том, что прожитые типа 30 лет, так смотришь на многих людей, которые сейчас, соответственно, живут, которым в районе 30, которые уже потеряли вообще вкус к жизни, да, радость какую-то от жизни. Таких, причем, кстати, становится все больше и больше. Мне кажется, этот средний возраст, когда говорили, что начинается вот этот кризис среднего возраста, он тоже сместился, как и говорят, что сейчас люди, в принципе, быстрее взрослеют, быстрее осмысливают все, да, почему-то это всегда все в плохом больше ключе на самом деле, да, вот что сейчас дети, к примеру, быстрее взрослеют, вот, и мне кажется, кризис вот этот среднего возраста, он, наверное, тоже сместился. И вот я думаю, что он сместился где-то в районе 30 лет. Опять-таки, это тоже не со всеми, наверное, связано. И у всех людей так, все люди разные. И как-то приходишь к той мысли о том, что помимо того, что люди сами по себе стали такие вот, наверное, депрессивные, да, времена такие сложные, да, вот это вот еще извне много каких вещей случается, ну, на данный момент, которые людям усугубляют эту ситуацию на самом деле, вот этой депрессии, вот этих кризисов, да, каких-то переходных моментов в жизни. И непонятно, если конец этому всему, да, наступает у людей потом белая полоса в жизни, или они не могут выбраться из нее. Примеров достаточно на самом деле много. К примеру, вот сосед у меня есть такой хороший парень был. И есть, он хороший человек сам по себе. Но вот у него сейчас очень сложные времена такие, как бы дизмораль на него напала. О том, что он не реализовался в своей жизни к 30 годам, что жизнь у него кончена. И не может он выбраться из этой ситуации. Да? Как бы, как говорят, если мы говорим, что это мужики такие, да, типа слабые, да, какие-то, ну, безморальные, ну, как бы такие вот, что в основном это случается, наверное, зачастую, может быть, это у мужиков случается в этом возрасте, такой кризис, наверное, да, каких-то неудач в своей жизни, не пришедших ни к чему достойному и хорошему. Но вопрос в том, что это мужики такие, типа слабые, или времена такие стали, что если вот разобраться так, вот, например, возьмем даже с древних времен, когда человеку нужно было добывать пищу самому, да, там убивать мамонтов, мужику стоило там сходить на охоту. Да, на охоту он сходил, кого-то там добыл добычу, принес домой, да, что-то где-то там поделал дома, и все как бы. Ну и это, возможно, как работа тоже на ежедневной основе, да, была. И как бы мужик в то время считался, но еще воином были, они воинами были, не воевали, да. В любом случае это все такая в основном физическая была работа, типа стратегии именно добычи пищи какой-то себе. Ну, тут вот требовалось, возможно, какое-то знание, да, тут я не спорю. Но в основном это была физическая работа. Если взять, к примеру, не такие далекие времена, когда там люди вот только выходили из пещер, да, взять даже, допустим, 50 лет назад, 100 лет назад, да, когда люди работали на заводах, и что тогда считалось именно мужиком, да, таким. Разница была, наверное, с нынешними временами в том, что если ты работал, к примеру, на заводе на каком-то, то тебе было этого всего достаточно. То есть ты уходил на завод, отработал свое время, да, пришел домой, какие-то тоже там, может, домашние дела, и, ну, и этого тебе было достаточно на самом деле. Как бы и все, и заключалась вся суть именно мужчин, ну вот, как бы устроиться главное на завод и работать физически, опять-таки, да, получить какое-то образование, так, ну, как бы среднеспециальное, к примеру, да, какой-нибудь токарь, идти на завод, отработать там 8-12 часов. Ну, это не легкая работа, я не спорю тоже с этим. Но опять-таки, этого зато было достаточно. Человек уходил, он отрабатывал там 12 часов и понимал, что ему будет всего достаточно. Ради этого и была, наверное, главная и основная мотивация. Да? И если перенесемся мы, наверное, в наше время уже, сейчас, на данный момент, то есть люди просто не знают на самом деле, как заработать, как получить жилье, как получить новый автомобиль. То есть способов получения данного результата его нету как такового. Это говоря о том, что ты будешь ходить на работу по 8, по 12 часов, допустим, сутками там работать, да, ты не заработаешь на машину, заработаешь ты на нее через 5 лет, если ты там не будешь ни пить, ни есть, как бы, да. Ну ладно, если вообще не тратить деньги, то заработаешь год. Ну такого же невозможно, это же только где-то в сказках. С учетом нынешних трат, то есть даже при зарплате какой-то средней, там 100 тысяч рублей, ну где-то 60, где-то 70, где-то 80, возьмем от 60, наверное, до 120, то есть, к примеру, достижение результата такой, как, к примеру, квартира, недвижка какая-то своя, это кредиты, ипотеки, то есть вот здесь и сейчас ты берешь. И залазя все глубже и глубже, то есть, как сказать, взял ты, к примеру, себе недвижимость, да, в ипотеку, пусть оно будет так. Помимо тех трат, к примеру, помимо этой ипотеки, там, ремонт и так далее, тебе за эти 20 лет нужно и телефоны менять, и одежду менять, и так далее, там, кушать надо. Машины также в этот же момент менять тебе надо. И то есть это кабала на самом деле такая, она дизморальная. И к чему это все? Что же значит мужик в наше время, который ходит на завод, работает 12 часов, а денег у него все равно нету. Как бы добычу он принести уже не может, да? Ну типа он может сходить в лес, но от этого толку особо не будет. И, наверное, сам интернет, во-первых, расфорсил вот это вот все, то, что люди должны зарабатывать какие-то миллионы. Они должны зарабатывать. Это было бы шикарно, если бы каждый зарабатывал. Но каждый по своей сути не может столько зарабатывать, да, потому что не хватит денег, чтобы каждый. А может их и хватит, но никто никому не даст так зарабатывать. И вот возвращаясь, к примеру, к тому, что какая зарплата? 1300, наверное, должна быть в наше время, чтобы как бы себя, наверное, обеспечивать, да? Хорошо. Одному. И кто же тогда мужик в наше время? Типа, что он должен делать? Что он должен выполнять? Как бы, если он ходит на работу, но смысла от этого нету. Ну, как бы он есть, да, у тебя какой-то идет доход, но если его недостаточно. Смотришь другие профессии, другую работу, да,